The second video didn't play even though I clicked it. It's fine. We're gonna just go with it. We're gonna roll with it. It does.
Good.
Whatever. Anyways, welcome to Recover Out Loud, episode number 56, brought to you by the Antisocial Network. Today we have a pretty awesome guest. Her name is Tiffany Herring from Greenville, North Carolina. How you doing, Tiffany?
Good. Thanks for having me, Sean.
Thank you for being on and volunteering some time to come and hang out with me. Would you like to give a formal introduction of yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Tiffany Herring. I am from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, currently living in Greenville, North Carolina. I come from a law enforcement family, and so I got into the family business whenever I graduated from high school. Just figured it was best to do what I know. So I worked in law enforcement for about 15 years before making a transition over to mental health. And I think that was really what was eye-opening, uh, because really the criminal justice system and the mental health care system, there's some blurred lines there. There's a lot of, crossover. And so I initially began working with crisis intervention team training, which is a 40-hour training for law enforcement, and learning, about mental health and crisis intervention and de-escalation. I really just started thinking, I think it's great that we're driving this point with law enforcement, but how many people, how many professions need to know de-escalation skills? So that was really me taking the information that we were teaching law enforcement and figuring out, okay, how can we teach this to medical professionals, customer service staff, managers, really anybody who's in the business of people and needs to learn how to communicate.
That's awesome. That's pretty awesome. And before we dive into all that, I want to say thank you for everything that you've done for your community because it's
Thank you.
huge. I don't think that people in law enforcement or mental health or anybody that holds a position where they're of service get enough credit. So thank you.
Thank you.
Uh, yeah. So also before we get into it, being from Pittsburgh, are you a Steelers fan? Please say no.
I am, but I'm not really the sports kind of girl anyway. I watch Bravo and Housewives, and that's how I unwind from all of the all of the serious work that I do during the day. So, I'll watch the
Well,
Steelers, but I'm more over there on Bravo.
it's not a priority on your list.
No, no. Whether they win or lose, I'm more concerned with college basketball in North Carolina because that's what my husband is really, I just like state to win because I know it makes him happy. So
Yeah, I know there's that huge rivalry. Um, how do you and how, what are your thoughts and feelings about living in North Carolina? Why did you choose to live in North Carolina?
I moved down here to go to East Carolina University, and I just decided to stay. It's a really beautiful state. I really love what we're doing here as far as mental health. Um, and I really wanted to stay and just be a part of change. It's especially Eastern North Carolina where I live. It's very rural. And so one of the things that I spend my days doing is really just being able to help some of these smaller communities, smaller counties be able to access services. Because think of how, difficult that is if you live in a town of 200 people. You probably don't have a hospital. You probably have to drive a while to get there. You probably have maybe one or two providers, and you certainly probably don't have a mental health professional or psychologist or therapist or something like that. So I really like looking at gaps and needs and services, and figuring out how we can get people in rural North Carolina to be able to access mental health care.
That's pretty awesome, and that's really admirable. I mean that. I'd say North Carolina is probably my second favorite state. That I've been to. Tennessee being my first. I don't know if you've been to Tennessee, but Tennessee is gorgeous,
Yeah.
absolutely gorgeous.
I just love
Um,
having the option of the beach is this way and the mountains are this way. I can have a little of both. It's beautiful.
Absolutely, yeah. I was actually at the beach a few weeks last weekend, out at Outer Banks, Kitty Hawk area, and
Nice. Very nice.
I've never been there. I've been to Wrightsville, and I've obviously been to what's the beach, Wilmington. I've been there, but never been to Kitty Hawk, and I was like impressed. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Outer Banks is going to be more of the laid back, kind of quieter beaches, and that's what I like. So,
Yeah, yeah, not
they're
too many tourists all over the place.
yeah.
Yeah, I heard that Outer Banks is where everybody goes to avoid the tourists from Wrightsville. So you're,
Yeah, well, I mean, it really depends on the time of year too. I mean, I love going this time of year and in the fall whenever there's not a lot of, students and families coming in because there are a lot of us. I include myself in this. There's a lot of Yankees coming down, to hit the beaches in the summertime. So, um, but yeah, it's beautiful, and it is. It's one of the most beautiful beaches, coming south if you live in Pennsylvania, Maryland, that you hit. So it's a great spot.
absolutely, absolutely. I can't wait to go there in the summer. I'm excited. I'm going to take a few trips out there in the summertime. But that's not what we're here. We're not here for me. We're here for you. So let's talk about your book. What is the title of your book and what does it cover?
Sure. My book is simply De-escalate. I just wanted a really easy title that I felt was attention grabbing. And like I said, I really wanted to convert a lot of these skills for the lay individual and really just make a blueprint of what exactly do I need to be saying and doing when I'm in these, intense, high conflict crisis situations. So I just think that there's a lot of really great tips in there and just it's less than 100 pages. It's just really a really simple guide to be able to get. I like getting right to the point, just like YouTube, just like, TikTok. People want to get right to the point. So that was really intentional whenever I wrote the book was let me just tell people what they really need to know, get to the point, and leave out all the rest because time is precious, especially when you work in this type of field.
Absolutely, time is absolutely precious when you're working in the field. What are some of those times that you needed to use de-escalation in your profession?
Sure. I actually, my history in law enforcement is working more with incarcerated individuals. So I worked with our local sheriff's office inside of our detention center, and I also worked for the Department of Public Safety prisons in North Carolina for quite some time. Especially working, I feel more so in earlier in my career, when you're kind of that patrol officer or kind of lower on the totem pole, you're working directly with those individuals. So it really takes a lot of trial and error. If you don't know how to communicate with people, you really learn pretty fast. When I teach officers or anyone really de-escalation skills who have had been working in their profession for 10, 15, 20 years, they kind of already know what to say and do because they've said the wrong things and they say, okay, well, make a mental note. Maybe I shouldn't say things that way, or maybe I should change my tone. Or so I would say the biggest story that sticks out to me is I had a woman come in and, especially in county detention, most people are under the influence. I had this woman who was, very drunk and we had to dress them out and take them to the back, right? You got to get them in their jumpsuit, get them back to the cell for the night. And this woman was just calling me every name in the book. She was talking about my mama. I mean, she was trying to tear me down. And so that's why, I also talk a lot about just confidence and not taking anything personally, especially if you're de-escalating, a customer or, a client or something like that. You have to be able to separate, this person is going through something. It's not about me right now, and kind of having to rise above that. So by just keeping my body language very calm, leaving my tone very calm. She wasn't happy. I don't think when we ended our interaction and she got back to her cell that she was happy, but she was cursing me out the whole time while complying. You mother F and blah, blah, blah. But she's putting on her pants. She's putting on her shirt. She's walking with me to where she needs to be. So and it's the same with kids, right? When you tell a kid, go clean your room, and they sometimes want to have the last word. And we say, oh, well, that little smart Alec, whatever. But as long as they're cleaning their room, let them fuss, let them say, oh, I hate this. How can mom, blah, 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 blah. If they're doing it, that is the goal. they're getting it done. So I would say really just knowing when to react and respond and when not to. And you really can't let people hit your triggers, because then you're kind of going the opposite of what you need to do. You are here to de-escalate this person. If you are not de-escalated yourself, it's never going to work. We're never going to find common ground.
Absolutely. And you know, it had to have been really difficult when you first started out, like working in a de-escalation and really being able to get that person from here down to here, even if they're still running their mouth. Was it pretty difficult for you for the first few times?
I actually think for me, it comes a lot more naturally. And I think, and no offense to men, but I think that women, like we can take the time. We are very patient. Um, I've just kind of noticed that women are better at de-escalation, or maybe it comes more naturally to them. But it really just it depends on the type of person that you are. It really comes down to, if you're actually here to help people. And again, you have to have a type of confidence and self-esteem that you're going to go into this situation and be able to help this person and get them to, a place of calm. They might not be happy, but just getting them to a place of calm is
Yeah.
really important.
I know for me, I've been in kind of both of the scenarios that you explained, where, on your end, where I was really calm, and I was able to help de escalate the situation. And I've been on the other one end where I'm like, you motherfucker, like, it's bad, right?
Yeah,
But I have a much greater appreciation now for being able to de-escalate situations and take people, meet people where they're at, but then bring them back down, right? Because
yeah,
it like you said, we have to look at the situation and say it's not about us. Like
yeah.
they might be just going through some shit, and it may be a bad day for them, or maybe a bad week, month, year, whatever, and we don't know their life outside of what we're seeing in front of us. So being able to really help that person de-escalate and calm down is very beneficial.
And especially, if I'm trying to help someone, if I'm trying to de-escalate someone, the more information that I know, the better. But if I go into this situation with an attitude, being disrespectful, how much information are you actually going to tell me? It's rapport building, it's gaining that trust, and it's really important. My eye contact, my body language, my tone. 70 to 90% of our communication is just body language. It could be crossed arms. It could be, just swirling your brow and squinting, that someone, sees that and they're like, oh, she's irritated. She doesn't care about me. She doesn't want to help me. So we really have to be very conscious of our body language, what we're saying. And again, this person might be upset. They might raise their voice. But the minute you raise your voice, you're in a fighting match and you're not getting anywhere. So everything is very tactical when it comes to de-escalation.
Absolutely, and it sounds like you have a bit of active listening in there too, as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always told law enforcement now, or anybody, you have two ears and one mouth. We should be listening more than we speak. And sometimes just letting someone vent and get it out, not interrupting, just being patient, hearing them out can de escalate a situation very quickly. Sometimes you don't have to say anything at all, but empathizing, wow, I'm really thankful that you just told me that. Thank you for sharing that. And thanking that person for sharing that information, because it probably is heavy information. It probably is information that they haven't told a lot of people. And so to just to kind of know that you've built that trust and rapport, and now they're saying, hey, I'm going to let this person help me because they're confident in their abilities and they seem knowledgeable about what they're doing, and they're actually showing me the respect. Respect goes such a long way.
Absolutely. Now, for the people that don't know, what is active listening?
Yeah, so there's a difference between hearing and listening, right? We all can hear, but are we actually trying to understand? Active listening is listening to understand. And I'm guilty of it too. I've had a lot of conversations where someone's been, talking, and I'm automatically thinking about, what am I going to respond with? What am I going to follow up with? And I've let someone vent before, and I've said, well, like you try to jump in, right, to interrupt, and you're not getting in there. And I've had to tell myself, like, what's the point of doing that? Let me take a breath. Let me sit back. Let me have this person give me all of the information. And silence can truly be your friend too. Sometimes when I'm de-escalating someone, they'll actually stop and kind of wait for a response or wait for me to ask a follow-up question. And I might just take another 2 or 3 seconds and just kind of shake my head, let them know I'm following. And they might actually jump in and continue talking more. So I'm actually getting more information because I'm giving them that space to speak.
Absolutely. And I found that a lot of people that we do de-escalate have all these problems, right? Or will have problems, and they don't seem to have a solution for those problems. But
Yep.
when you start to actively listen to them and give them that space, they talk through the problem to get to the
Yep.
solution.
Yeah.
And they've already found the solution. You don't have to say a damn thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, a crisis can be anything, and a crisis can be different for everybody. My definition of a crisis and your definition of a crisis can be two completely different things. It's just what can't I cope with in that moment? And I just think when it comes to crisis, we just really need to be listening to each other more. It really is important. Um, and empathizing. I might not, like, for example, I've never been in a situation where I couldn't pay my light bill and my lights are potentially going to get shut off. Okay, I've never been in that situation, but I can empathize with someone in that situation because they're going to tell me, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I have these kids that I need to take care of. Like, they need electricity, they need hot water. I don't know what that is like personally, but I have children, I have loved ones, I have a home, and to try to imagine, like, what would that be like if I didn't have enough money and my utilities were being threatened cut off? What would I feel like? I would probably feel just like this person is right now, anxious, in a panic, worried. So if you can relate to that feeling, whatever it is, shame, embarrassment, guilt, sadness, um, if you can get to that feeling, we all know what feelings feel like. We just have to relate. You don't have to live the exact situation. You just have to be able to relate to what that person is feeling.
Absolutely, I would agree 100%. And now, I think sometimes in society we get empathy and sympathy mixed up. What are the differences between the two?
Yeah, I think sympathy a lot of times is, I feel bad for you. I think sympathy a lot of times is, well, if you need anything, let me know. How many times has someone said, if you need anything, let me know? And we're not going to say, oh, well, you know what, I really need this. We
Yeah.
rarely do that.
Mhm.
You know, if somebody's going through something, maybe they're grieving. Hey, I want to bring you a meal this week. What day works for you? Really being proactive. Um, it just goes so much further. It's not even, like I said, you don't even have to go through the same thing. It's just a matter of, how you feel. And we could, honestly, we could experience the same thing. And we both could be feeling completely different. You could have lost a parent, I could have lost a parent, but our relationships with our parents could be very different. So I never want to compare, oh, well, I remember when I lost my father, I felt like this and I did this. Nobody wants to hear your advice in that moment. All they really want to do is be heard. Empathizing, active listening in that moment, you're going to build a bigger connection than anything you could possibly say or any advice that you think you need to give in that moment.
Oh, absolutely. It kind of looks like a charity case versus you really caring about somebody.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, oh, I can, problem solve for you versus, hey, I'm here,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna be the best available person for you that
Well,
I
and
can
then
be.
and then think about how that person could even respond. I start saying, "Well, when my dad died last year," and you're like, "Oh, well, my dad died 10 years ago. I guess you got to spend more time with your dad than I spent with my dad, so I shouldn't be so upset my dad just died." Like, you see how you can kind of
Yeah,
dig yourself into a hole there. But we all really kind of worry about what to say in those moments. It can be really difficult. But that's the thing, you don't have to say a whole lot. You just have to listen. And even if you just end by saying, I don't even know what to tell you right now, but I'm just really glad that you felt like you could tell me, is going to make that person feel like they just confided in someone who truly cares.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, back getting back to de-escalation, what do you feel is the hardest part outside of removing yourself and your emotions out of de-escalation? Because I know it's hard for me, but what do you feel is personally hard for you?
I just think we're all human. and we never know what that one kind of trigger could be, what that one word is that really makes someone upset. I think when it comes to, I think teamwork is really important in de-escalation, and I think you almost have to have that team member with you. If I'm de-escalating someone and I'm starting to get upset, I'm having the opposite effect of what I'm trying to do. So having that team member just kind of standing back and saying, hey, Tiffany, let me take it from here. Let me take up recognizing that I'm in distress. I'm having some issues right now. I'm getting escalated and saying, okay, Tiffany, let me take over from here. And same if, my partner was de-escalating, something was going on. I can't tell you how many times I've been de-escalating someone and it's calm. And that one person just walks in the door and they are at a 10 again. So I think it's a matter of knowing when you can help and knowing when you can't help, because sometimes you just can't be the one. And especially if, maybe I'm a woman and I've been sexually assaulted, I might not want to talk to a man. I might be more comfortable with a woman. You have been in the military. You might be more comfortable talking to someone who's had that lived experience, who is a veteran. So just kind of knowing, what does this person need? Who might they be better to relate to? Finding the right person to de-escalate, I think, is the biggest challenge. And also, there are some people who just really shouldn't take the lead on de-escalation. There are just a lot of people who truly don't have this in them. It's a gift in a lot of ways. I can teach a lot of skills, but you have to want it, and you kind of have to have that gift a lot of ways to really be able to be very successful.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree 100%. I think for me, like what my biggest obstacle is um, being afraid to say the wrong thing, right? And
Yeah.
I think that is the most terrifying for me, is like saying that wrong thing, because I can have the best intentions at heart and come out and say everything that's on my heart, or or listen to them with all the intention in the world. But if I say that one thing, it could take everything and flip it sideways, and I could have
Yeah.
lost their trust, all that stuff.
But
So
you know what, Sean, here is where a lot of people have a problem, is because they feel like they're in control. They're the one taking the lead on de-escalation. They they can't very well apologize. Some people have this ego where they just can't say, like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. I wasn't trying to upset you. There's nothing wrong with humbling yourself and apologizing. And it's really hard for some people to do that. It truly is. But there's nothing wrong if you feel like you said the wrong thing, if someone gets upset, and using their name. Using some people's first names are their favorite word. That's their favorite word in the world. Using their name. Sean, I saw it upset you. I really just want to help you. I care about what's going on, Sean. Let's just figure this out. So there's nothing wrong if you feel like you said the wrong thing, in apologizing and even saying, like, let's start over. Let's do this again.
absolutely, I would agree 100%. What do you think that people's favorite word is their own name?
I mean, you think about it, you can be in a loud room. Someone says, Sean, you usually can catch it. It's one of the first things that we hear when we're a baby. It's one of the first words that we learn to write. It just really gets our attention. It's our name. It's our identifier. So the more you can use someone's name when you're de-escalating, the better. Because when you hear our own name, there is this sense of, like, humanizing us, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I wanted to ask about, and I think it's really important for the listeners to understand, is what is a crisis intervention team? I know what it is,
Yeah.
but from your experience, what is a crisis intervention team?
Yeah. So across the country, there are a lot of law enforcement agencies that really promote crisis intervention training. And not a lot of people know, when they call 911, if they need law enforcement, they can say, hey, can you send a CIT officer? This is someone who's been more trained in being able to recognize, respond, and de escalate those situations. Um, so I think asking for a CIT officer is really important, because, not everybody loves when law enforcement shows up to their door, right? So even just letting law enforcement know, hey, this is a mental health call, um, that kind of puts the officer in the mind of, okay, this person, they're probably not dangerous. If there's a weapon, obviously they might go in a little bit different. If it's someone, threatening suicide, they want to be safe. But a lot of times these calls are very, routine. And, I know every time something goes bad, when we hear about a school shooting, we want to say, oh, it was mental health. It was mental health. It was mental health. The majority of people who have mental health diagnoses will never be violent or dangerous. There's not a correlation between those two things. But I think just, knowing that that CIT officers are available, letting the 911 operator know that you would like that it is a CIT call, it's mental health. There's also a lot of programs in place now through law enforcement agencies where they may send a social worker to some of these lower level, like welfare checks and things like that. Solicitation, some of these, lower crimes that, maybe someone with a gun doesn't need to respond to. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that we're kind of working with law enforcement assisted diversion programs where, if you are maybe have substance use disorder and you're arrested, they might just hold that charge over your head and say, hey, you know what? We're going to have you go through this program. We want you to get clean. We want you to get help. And as soon as you complete that program, we're going to go ahead and drop those charges. Those programs are excellent. I'm so glad that that's something that you've been able to participate in, because it really is where we see change.
That program is a lifesaver. Complete 100%. It revolutionized the way that I think and my behaviors and the way that I act. And it's not because I was afraid to go to jail, but it was I needed to get better, and I needed it for myself and for other people.
Yeah, and especially, being a veteran, having to come back and figure out how to live again when you're not the same person that you were,
Oh
it's
yeah.
like you kind of need a program like that to kind of teach you like how to live and to build your self-esteem. And so I think that's fantastic. I'd love to see more programs like that start popping up across the US.
There's actually 4,000, if I'm not wrong, 4,000 different therapeutic courts, drug courts, mental health courts around the country, and it's insane how many people there are
And it's
associated with them.
I got chills just now thinking about it. But like when you go to like a recovery court and you see these people who, they might be graduating from the program that day, and their parents are there, their parents who, you know, disowned them a lot of times because of substance use, because of what happened. And then to see them clean and to stand up and cheer and hug their parents, and they're so proud. It's one of the most beautiful things. And we've been trying to, address substance use and mental health with the criminal justice system for so long, and it's not working. It's
Yeah.
not working. Punishing people, throwing them in a cell is not what we need. We need services, we need programs, we need resources, because we were all raised different. We all came from different backgrounds. Not everybody knows the things that not everybody knows, oh, I need to, clean my house. I need to wash dishes. Like, just some of the most basic things. Not everybody knows. And that's what we kind of have to keep in mind. And there's always room to learn. And we have to have more programs like this to help teach some people who want to do better, but just might not know how.
I absolutely agree. I was one of those people prior to getting in trouble with the law where I looked at people and I said, people are inherently bad. That's why they're in jail. Right. And then I myself experienced it. And I'm like, no, we've just made bad decisions. Right. We've just made some pretty shit decisions in life. And we've, continued that trend. And no, there hasn't been an intervention to stop us. There hasn't been, there hasn't been somebody to break the cycle or allow us to break the cycle. The rate of recidivism is just super high because people keep reoffending, and then boom, when clearly somebody's going into jail, because they've been caught with drugs, they've been caught with drinking and driving, DUIs, they've been
Mhm.
they've been out and about and running amok, but they haven't really been given that opportunity to change their life. They've been released from jail and say, hey, good luck. But you're
Yeah,
going right back to what you know versus
right,
getting into a recovery program to help
right.
you gain sobriety, gain tools and skills. Maybe you don't want that. Maybe that's something that you don't want, but the services are available.
Yeah. And then, the number one factor that we see reduced recidivism, do you know what that is?
Yep.
A job.
Yep.
having a job, having employment. Okay, so now I've been incarcerated and I get out, I don't have a license, right? I might be on probation. I've applied for this job, but they don't hire felons. Like it's things like that that we really have to be taking a look at, because if we want people to truly heal, they have to be working.
Yeah.
And especially now in these times, I hear nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to work. People want to work. It's just we have to be able to have them qualified, get the job, and then be able to have the transportation actually get there. I don't know if you've ever had to take in like a city bus line or a county bus line. It is some of us never had to experience that, so we don't realize how difficult that is. But somebody might have to get up, 2 hours earlier to just catch the bus so that they can get to this stop, so they can get on this line. And it's very difficult. And if we can address some of those challenges, transportation, jobs, we would see people do a lot better, and recidivism would totally decrease.
Absolutely, because as a society, we look at purpose and we say, okay, what gives us purpose? Work gives us purpose. You
Yep.
know, so if they don't have, I've had participants that I work with that gave up on the program because they couldn't get a job because they were in the program, because and this was a job to help them sustain, not even get ahead, but
Yeah.
sustain their living. They could not fulfill the responsibility of the courts and have a sustaining job. And it's like, well, now we're sending people right back into that hamster wheel that they're running into, because
Yep.
we're not giving them the opportunity to thrive along with meet the requirements of the court.
Yep.
It's absolutely insane. But I lived in Alaska before. I don't know that I mentioned that. I lived in Alaska before, and we were talking just a few minutes ago about the crisis intervention teams. And our, Alaska's looked a whole lot different than everybody else's. I think it was one police officer, one case manager, a peer support, an EMS worker, as well as a firefighter. So like it was just 5 people going
Yeah.
out there, and because it's like you get a mental health call. Okay, what service does this person actually need? And then they
Right.
can help assist. But
I mean, you want to talk about rural, because I've been to Alaska as well. It's beautiful, but there's what, like 9 major highways in Alaska, and it's huge.
yeah,
So they have one of the highest suicide rates. I
yeah.
mean, with it just being so rural, not a lot of services, not a lot of kind of opportunity in some of these areas. Absolutely, that makes it so much more challenging.
Yeah, and so that's why it's so cool to look at the different structures of the different crisis intervention teams and the way that we do things, because it's completely different based off of like a big city. Like you take a population of 1 million people, and those services are going to look different from a rural area like Alaska. Whereas you have less people in one state than you do in the whole city of New York
Yeah.
City.
Yeah.
It's insane, absolutely
Mhm.
insane. So we're gonna switch
Well,
gears.
just
Oh,
to
go ahead.
kind of add one more thing to that, and we saw this during COVID with kids, is you also have to have internet access. Getting internet, some of these rural areas in North Carolina still don't have internet. So even if I don't have the option or transportation to go to see a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, if I don't have internet, that throws out the whole virtual option of some type of virtual therapy or support group. So that's another issue we see in those rural areas.
Oh, that's you're not lying there. You're not lying there. It's the resources,
Hmm.
the lack of resources.
Yep.
But anyways, we're gonna switch gears and we're gonna talk about something that I love to talk about. And I'm not saying I love to specifically talk about it. It's one of those things I like to talk about: self care.
Okay.
and and you're also another subject matter expert in self-care. What exactly is self-care?
Yeah. And I think that word self care is kind of getting diluted. We use that. Oh, you just need some self care. You just need some self care. Well, what the heck does that even mean, right?
Yeah.
Self care is just essentially anything that you're going to do for yourself to make you feel better. If I'm sitting at my computer and I'm frustrated, I'm getting, have to answer a lot of emails or something, I might say, because we've all probably responded in a way we shouldn't to an email that we probably should have just let simmer for a little bit. But even just saying, okay, right now I'm going to walk outside with my dog, stroll around the garden, get a little bit of sunshine, maybe feel the grass beneath my feet. That makes me feel good. If I get off work, I'm really stressed, like, oh, I just had such a long day. I just need to transition into relaxing. What do I want to do right now? I think I'm going to go take a bubble bath, like finding those little things. And, hobbies, that can be a hobby too. When I'm outside gardening, I get lost. I don't know if it's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock. So I always say finding those things that you get lost in. That's truly an item of self-care. It doesn't necessarily have to be a thing. And one of the topics I talk about in my book that is really a blueprint to live by is called MEDS, MEDS. So the M stands for meditation, which is also very scary for a lot of people because they're like, just let me put on my Birkenstocks and my patchouli and like it's not, it's kind of
Yeah.
this way that we think whenever we hear the word meditation. And it can just be so simple. It could just be sitting in silence. How often do we ever sit in silence? How often do you actually take some time to not have music, not have a television, not have a cell phone ringing, text messages coming through, but actually just sitting in silence and taking some deep breaths? You don't have to sit cross-legged on the floor. You can sit in a chair, just, feet on the floor, hands in your lap, just taking some deep breaths. It could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. One of the things that's interesting about meditation, though, is it's a lot like, running a marathon. It probably is going to be very difficult to do at first. And especially if you are worrisome, if you maybe have a lot of trauma, sometimes sitting in silence with your own thoughts brings up a whole lot of feelings and emotions, but it also brings up a lot of clarity. And, that's the thing about the brain. The brain is meant to think the same way the heart is meant to beat. The lungs are meant to breathe. Not everything that comes, just because you think it doesn't mean it's true, right? So sitting with those thoughts, letting them come in, letting them pass. If it's a positive, thought, acknowledging it. If it's a negative thought, kind of, why is it here, and pushing it out. But just like running a marathon, I can't run 5 miles. If you were like, go run 5 miles, I would have to run and walk and stop, and it would take a little while. But with meditation, same thing. I might do it for 5 minutes. Then the next day I might try for 10 minutes, and then for 15 minutes. Especially when it came to a lot of content with that book, sometimes we think we have to be looking for information. When I just meditated and I thought about, writing my book and the things I wanted to be in it, I got so much more inspiration from sitting in silence and just letting those ideas come than sitting here writing, searching on the internet, like, what do I want to add? So meditation is so powerful, looking inward, being alone with our thoughts, sitting in silence. It's just relaxing. I mean, if you have high blood pressure, check it before you meditate and check it after you meditate. You'll notice that your blood pressure has gone down. My heart, I go all the time. I'll sit down to meditate and I'll feel like my heart's about to beat out of my chest. But then I sit there and I listen to maybe the birds outside and take those few deep breaths. I feel the fan, blowing in my hair. And, by the end of that meditation, I'm calm and my heart is just back to normal again. And it's just a nice transition into, the next step or whatever you're doing next. So I also recommend a really great free resource. There's a ton of different apps out there for meditation. But there's one called Insight Timer. It's a big gold bowl. You'll see the little icon, but Insight Timer, you can actually go in there, choose whether you got 5, 10, 15, however much time you have, and choose a guided meditation. And it doesn't even have to be a guided meditation. It could be a sound. I personally, everyone thinks this is so funny, I love listening to monks chant. If you've ever listened to some monks chant and the bowls and the boom, like, there's something about it that's just so soothing and so calming. Maybe for you, it's water, listening to the rain or a waterfall or something. But just finding that sound that relaxes you and can kind of get you in the zone for a little bit. For me, when I meditate for 20 minutes, I actually feel like I had a power nap. It really is rejuvenating in a lot of ways. So definitely check out or try meditation if you've never had an opportunity for that. So that's the M in meds. The E is going to be exercise. I know that word scares me too. I don't always like it, but I go to the gym because I know I have to. I'm, going to be 40 in a couple of years. So I know these are things that I need to do to stay well. And I feel better. I don't always feel good when I go to the gym, but I've never left the gym and say, oh, I feel really terrible. You just got to do it. You got to do it. And it could just be a 30-minute walk outside, just moving your body, stretching, whatever that looks like, just making sure that you're moving your body for at least 30 minutes a day. The D is for diet. Nobody likes that either. And that doesn't mean necessarily being on a diet, but it's a balance. Maybe I'm going to have this piece of cake today, so maybe that will be my lunch. Or, I had fast food last night, so maybe I'll have a salad tonight. Really just finding that balance, staying away from, a lot of starches or processed food. We know that's terrible for us too. But again, it's all about balance. And I know I feel better when I eat better too. And then finally, sleep is the S. Sleep is actually a big part of my book as well, because when I was working at the detention center, I was working a lot of different shifts. I was working night shift. I was very sleep deprived. And I actually had a nervous breakdown on the job. I went to therapy for the first time after having that nervous breakdown. We talked a little bit about things. For me, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I like to work. I like to go. I like to be doing things. But just like anyone else, I can take on too much and burn out. So sleep is so incredibly important. I know a lot of my anxiety came from a lack of sleep, because once I got a really great doctor and a good provider, which is also important to say, you might decide that this doctor isn't for you. It might take 2 or 3 doctors to find the right one, but actually finding someone that sits down and listens to you and doesn't just want to, okay, say, all right, you need a refill, here you go. But finding someone that actually listens to you. And when I found that doctor that actually listened to me, and she said, well, Tiffany, do you think that the reason why your anxiety is so high is because you're not sleeping well? And I said, possibly. She said, okay, well, let's address sleep. Let's make sure you sleep, a good solid 8 hours throughout the night, and see if that helps. And after a few months of getting restful sleep at night, I was able to go off my anxiety medications. Now, that's not to say that's for everybody, but we really don't give sleep enough credit for what it does for our body, our physical and emotional well-being. We need sleep. We got to make sure we're getting it.
Oh my God, you're speaking my language. All of it, you are. The meditation. Meditation has helped me through some of the hardest times in my life. Right, some of the times where I had that big question mark in front of a situation that I couldn't answer, and I'm like, "What do I do?" Meditation. Boom, meditation. You talked about being with yourself for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Yeah, that's an absolute must. Shutting the world out. That's an absolute must. I turn on ASMR because it's like triggers my brain and it helps me out. Sometimes I'll throw on guided meditation. Other times I'll be completely quiet and just listen to what's happening outside. The cars passing by. It'll help me out. But meditation, can answer a lot of our problems that we have if we just pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And I used to be one of those people that's like meditation. I got to be
Yeah.
quiet. I have to be quiet. No, but I love it. I love it. I try to meditate at least once a day. At
Yeah.
least once a day. On a good day, it's like 2 times a day. It's like before I start my day, and then when I'm closing my day out, or sometimes in the middle, depending. And so yeah, I exercise. I try to get out and walk around the block. Sometimes spend some time out and about in the sun, and I think that's another big one is the sun.
Yes.
The
Absolutely.
vitamin D.
Vitamin D.
Vitamin D can change the perspective of your life. Um, and diet, you hit it right on the head. I think that I know when I've eaten like shit, I feel like shit. But
Yeah.
then when you eat healthy and you start bringing in the necessary uh, the necessary supplements into your body, and what our body needs to survive and to thrive, you start to feel better. You don't feel like bloated and all that nasty stuff. And then finally, sleep. When I was in the army, I absolutely hated the idea of sleep. I was like,
Oh,
sleep, I don't need it. I don't need sleep. I can survive on caffeine and tobacco.
Oh gosh. And
Yeah,
that was actually not letting you sleep well too, caffeine and tobacco. Wow.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I got to that point where I had a suicide attempt and there was all these questions like, okay, my mental health is in check. Boom. Okay. Well, it's not really in check because there's some life events happening. At the time I was drinking, that's another one. But another thing was I wasn't sleeping.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed with insomnia, and they weren't trying to help me figure out why I wasn't sleeping. They were just saying, "You have insomnia, dude, and this is how it's going to be." And it wasn't until I met a counselor outside the military that said, "Dude, you have to go to sleep. Like
Yeah.
sleep's not just going to help solve some of these problems, but it's going to help heal your brain. It's going to help heal your body. It's going to reset everything that you have so that you feel refreshed and rejuvenated." And that's why a lot of people, when we get to the points where we start to feel like we want to relapse, they ask, okay, the halts: hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, right? If one of those four is off or more than four are off, then there could be a potential problem in the future. So
Absolutely.
you're speaking my language.
Great. I love it. And I love Halt M too. I
Yeah.
definitely touch on that. Well, I actually have Halt and then I added an M at the end because, I know we ask, are you hungry? Because hunger can cause a mental health crisis. Angry, lonely, tired, but also that M is medicine.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a mental health crisis and asking someone like, do you take any medication? Have you taken any medication today? Um, that because a lot of times, especially when it comes to mental health, there's a lot of reasons why folks don't take their medication. It could be cost, or it could be a matter of I took this medication and, now I think I feel better. So I don't need it anymore. I'm going to go off of it. And then they kind of spiral and go into crisis. So, yeah, I love asking that because I know that even just that halt, right? If
Yeah.
I'm hungry, I'm angry. Anybody is. Think about that. Angry. If you're angry, you're probably going to start acting a certain way. Loneliness is, such a trigger for crisis for a lot of people. And then tired, we already talked about the importance of sleep. But, I think it's an episode of Seinfeld where like Elaine had to stay up all night or something for an appointment, and like finally she starts like hallucinating, like seeing shadows. And I can't tell you how many times I've been there too. I remember driving home from like a 12-hour night shift, so sleep deprived, and like slamming on the brakes because I think I'm about to hit a deer and it's a mailbox. Oh, that's just, you know what I mean? If you think about, I love what you said about healing your brain, but even if you think about your brain as like as a cell phone, right? You have to charge your phone every night or it's not going to work. It's not going to work effectively. And you start seeing it down in that red, something's wrong, right? Uh-oh, I better get some charge. That's what it is with sleep. We've got to be able to charge our brain. That is how we function. And if we get enough sleep, that's how we function well.
Absolutely. I find it funny that people have coined the term hangry, right? They're like, I'm so hangry. And we rush to go get food, right? We rush to go get food, but they're not saying the same for lonely and tired, right?
Yeah,
Like
that's true.
loneliness, when we get to that point of being lonely, we start to feel comfortable in that loneliness.
Yeah.
And then when we're tired, oh, if I just drink another energy drink, as I'm drinking a Celsius, um, hey, let's just drink another energy drink. It'll wake us right up. But
Yeah.
you're literally defeating the purpose of going to sleep.
Yeah.
At that point, you're throwing
There's
more
really there's
caffeine.
really nothing impressive about like staying up late to me. When you're in your early 20s, like, yeah, I can go all night. Now I'm like, I need to be in bed by 10. Okay, I need my beauty rest. You
Yeah,
don't want to talk to me tomorrow if I don't get a good night's sleep tonight.
yeah. My girlfriend was like, "Oh, I go to bed. I'm in bed by like 8:30, 9 o'clock." And when I first met her, I was like, "What? What? Are you serious? You're in bed by 8 or 9 o'clock?" And then I started falling into that routine, and I was like, I've got to get to bed by 8:30 now. Like I have to be laying in bed by 8:30, relaxing, or else there's like one or two nights a week where I have to stay up because I have groups that I run in Alaska. But like I have to be in bed by 8:30 or 9 o'clock because if I'm not, the rest of my night's going to be screwed up, and then the next day is going to be screwed up, and then I'm going to have to jump
Yeah.
back in that cycle. So yeah, absolutely. I adore
And
sleep now.
there's something to be said about routine as well, whether it's sleep or whatever it is, like your brain loves a pattern. So anytime you can have a routine in place, that's going to be a real big benefit to your mental health.
Absolutely. So, next question, and I think the final question: uh, what is what is self care not? Because we talked about what self care is. What is not self care?
Self-care is not I'm gonna have a drink to relax me. Drugs and alcohol are gonna have the opposite effect. Um, yeah, self-care is not selfish. And just really think of self-care as anything I can do for myself. Um, that's really what I think about. What do you think self-care is not?
I I would agree with you, but I would throw in self care is not what you're supposed to be doing normally, right? So, like, if for me, if self care is not going to counseling, because that is something that I have to do. That is a part of my schedule.
Mhm.
Self care is not me going to an AA meeting because I have to do that to maintain my recovery. What self care is for me is what I do to remove myself from a situation that might be stressful,
Mhm.
that might give me anxiety, that might bring on depression, that changes my mindset just a little bit so that it influences the way that I act later on.
Yeah, and it sounds like when you said that, that's also setting boundaries,
Yeah.
which is really important.
Yeah. I mean, but self care looks different for everybody. So it's not like I'm not saying that Tiffany's wrong or the next person's wrong. Like, but for me, self care, self care is meditation. Love it. Absolutely. I will run to meditation anytime. Self care is walking around the block, walking around town. Because I live in a small enough town where like I can walk around town and see everything I need to see and come
Mhm.
back home in a half an hour. Self care for me is turning on the radio full blast, even though it's going to mess my ears up, and listening to something that I really enjoy. Cooking is self care for me. Even though I'm going to eat the food, cooking brings me joy because I'm able to escape from wherever I'm at mentally, emotionally, and I can put my love and my intention into the food for other people to eat.
Yeah, I love that.
That's just a few things. I have a laundry list of self care.
Yeah, and along with, I mean, I know we talked meditation, but mindfulness, which is something a little bit different, but I am a very mindful person, and people ask me, like, how are you so positive all the time? But honestly, I really appreciate the smallest things. An ice cold glass of water, just, oh, this is so nice. Like, how many people in the world do not have access to clean water? If you could just notice things like that, like, how lucky am I to have this right now? Just, playing with my nephew and, as much as it's like, oh, come on, Aunt Tiff, I wanted to come on, Aunt Tiff, he's not going to be this little forever.
Yeah,
This silly little boy, he just wants to go like kick a ball out in the yard. Even though I'm tired, let me go do that because these are the little things that are so important. The more that you can recognize all of those little things and tiny blessings in your life, really, the more happy you're going to be overall emotionally.
absolutely. I used to hear when I was younger, even in my early 20s, like live in the moment. I'm like, what? I don't live in the moment. I'm here, right? Like that's in the moment, but it's completely different mindset. It's
Oh yeah,
being mindful, being present in the moment. And for me, that's one of my biggest things right now in life is being present in the moment and really being grateful for the things that are happening in that moment, even though they may not be great, but
yeah.
being able to be in that moment and experience that and be a part of that moment, even if it's only a ripple in time. Right.
Yeah. I mean, because how many of us have had like an event or something? I mean, I think about like a wedding, right? Someone, bridezilla or whatever, and she's so worried that she didn't even enjoy it. I actually kind of felt that way on Easter this year. I hosted it at my house and, I wanted everything to be perfect. And I was so focused on, do you want some coffee? How about a slice of pie? Da, da, that I really never sat down and had a conversation with anybody. And so that was kind of something that I noted, this will not happen at the next holiday. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to connect with the people that I love because that's what it's all about. That's what we're going to remember is the memories and how we made each other feel, not, did Aunt Linda have an extra slice of pie?
Right. Right. How hot was that coffee, madame? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I I've enjoyed this conversation. I really have. This has been a
This
good
has been really
conversation.
fun, and I appreciate you having me because, like I said, I don't think a lot of people know what de-escalation is. There's a lot of people who are taking de-escalation now that I feel like it's just like maybe a part of their job. Oh yeah, we have to do 6 hours of this every year, but I don't want people to look at it as like something that's hard, that's a task, because I'm telling you, just having these skills aren't just going to help you on the job. They're going to help you in your personal life as well. Because knowing how to talk to people, how to listen to people, and how to communicate, that's really, where the bread is buttered right there. And you're gonna see that really flourish in all aspects of your life. We have to know how to talk and listen to each other better.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Tiffany, where can we find your book and where can we find you?
Yeah, my book is available on Amazon, Simply De-escalate by Tiffany Herring. I'm actually going to be on Audible here in a few weeks. So if you don't want to get the book, you can wait for Audible. We'll be launching that soon. And you can follow me on any of my socials at Simply De-escalate.
Oh, let me know when it's out on Audible. I'm going to get it
Okay,
because
I totally
I,
will.
I'll sit there and I'll listen to it while I'm doing my stuff. I
Yeah, and
enjoy it.
I'm really excited about this. I actually just added two new chapters, one on trauma responses and one on grief, just because I
Nice.
felt like there was something missing. It was great to like put the skills in this book, but I thought I need to talk a little bit more about trauma responses because that really has to do with how we respond and how we communicate with each other. And then grief because we've all grieved something or someone. So, I just thought those were two more, elements in there that will help kind of make de-escalation a little bit more clear and hopefully get people excited. There's also a section on coloring for self-care. My friend Stacy Soderholm, she's an artist, Mad Creations by Stacy on Instagram, who made some really beautiful illustrations that you can color. So, talking about self care, coloring can also have that meditative experience. So, bust out your crayons and color pencils, learn some skills, and color some cool pictures.
That's awesome. Thank you for spending time with me, Tiffany. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean. We'll
It's
do it
been a
again.
really, yeah, absolutely. We got to do it again. There's got to be an update.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Lots to learn.
absolutely. Till next time,
Next time.
everybody. Next time. I hope everybody has a good day. And I have really enjoyed this. Much love.